heroes and there are legends. Heroes come and go. Legends never die. We usually say that you cannot become a legend before death. These are living legends. If the legends fall silent, who will teach the children of our ways? Sun Coaches Podcast, Season 5, brought to you by Titan Sensor, is proud to present The Legends. Sun Coaches is proud to partner with Titan Sports for the next 4 seasons on Sun Coaches Podcast. Titan GPS delivers technological superiority and improved player performance through wearable GPS made for high school football and strength and conditioning. From speed training to athlete recruit to workload enhancement, Titan is the easy-to-use yet comprehensive GPS tool to get it done. There's no minimum to get started, and Titan will walk you through every step to success. Message us on X at Titan Sensor to learn more and get in touch. Welcome to Sun Coaches Podcast, Season 5, the Legends series, and I can't think of too many other people that personify the moniker of Legends as our next guest, Coach Dexter Wood. Thanks for being on with us.
Chris, this is an honor. I'm looking forward to visiting with you.
Well, Coach, I know where you started your coaching career, and I'm not going to assume, but I would guess that you might have grown up in Alabama.
I sure did. Yep. I grew up in a small town in South Alabama called Ozark, Alabama, small city school system, and just grew up running the streets and walking to school and got involved in sports. Sometimes my parents didn't even know what I was doing and where I was. But I don't know. I really had no role models of college. My dad nor mother had ever attended college. But I remember at a very young age, if you lived in Alabama pretty well, at least in my town, you had to decide if you were Alabama or Auburn. And so for me, for whatever reason, I enjoyed 4 o'clock on Sundays to watch the Bear Bryant show. And I began to dream at an early age, man, I would love to play at Alabama and play for Coach Bryant. And so, fast forward and I developed some size and some skills. And lo and behold, I got a scholarship to Alabama. And that dream came true. And so I entered Alabama with 45 other freshman guys in 1969 and as a wide receiver. And it's about as excited and privileged and scared all at the same time as anyone could be from a little town of Ozark. And so spent 4 years in the football program there, played quite a bit on the freshman team, and in fact was able to contribute as a sophomore in the back then the pro offense. We were throwing the ball around, but we'd gone 6-5 and 6-5. And so I come in to the start of my junior year, and Coach Bryant communicates to us that we're going to change our whole philosophy. We're going to the wishbone. So all of us 8 or 10 wide receivers are now playing one position, one wide out, because it was a tight end and 3 running backs and 1 wide out. And so for my last 2 years at Alabama, I became somewhat of the blocking specialist. And we had a couple other speedier guys than me that went on passing downs were in there. And I love to tell the story of the wishbone offense. My senior year, I was the second leading receiver on the team and caught 13 passes. That's how much we threw, how little we threw the football. So, but you know what? That was back in an era that Coach Bryant certainly instilled in us that we all had a role and it was important. And my role was to be the best blocking wide receiver possible, and I was. And I found my way on the playing field doing that. I wasn't necessarily a very great talented receiver in terms of speed and everything. I had great hands, and I could block, and that's what I tried to do. So anyway, that shaped me tremendously, being in that football program, being in a football dorm with guys from all over the country and having a common goal, the strain and discipline and goal to be a national champion in Alabama, was about everything we went about. and shaped me like nothing else. And so 4 years later, I'm trying to decide what to do with this business degree. And I didn't know what to do. I interviewed for some business type related jobs. And so about that time, I thought, you know what? I had worked some previous summers at a boys' ranch with young guys, and even a summer kind of as an assistant youth director at a church. And I loved working with young people. And the idea of coaching had crossed my mind with a couple of my buddies. And so this is the spring of my senior year of not knowing what I wanted to do. And I decided to go talk to Coach Bryant about that and ask him what he thought about me going into coaching. And I don't know where I got such boldness. We were scared to death of Coach Bryant. And I will probably admit it took me 3 or 4 visits walking up to that second floor and going down that hallway. And I walked right back down the other set of stairs for 2 or 3 days in a row because I was scared to knock on the door. And finally, one of those days, his door was propped open, and I peevishly knocked on the door, and he invited me in and put his feet up on his desk. Boy, what do you want? And said, Coach, I don't know. I'm really thinking about going into coaching, and because you've influenced and shaped me so much, I just want to know what you think about it. What's your opinion of that? And of course, that 5-minute little meeting with Coach Bryant probably shaped and set me off as now 52 years later, as much as anything that I've experienced, because I pretty well modeled my coaching philosophy and coaching career, and even as an athletic director, just in leadership, from that 5-minute meeting with Coach Bryant in spring of 1973. And so when I get to speak to groups and coaches and clinics and things like that, I often tell the story of that meeting with Coach Bryant and how it shaped me. And so as that story goes, I sat down, Coach, I want to go into coaching. He said, well, son, just remember, this is the first thing. Don't go into coaching unless you cannot live without it. Of course, I didn't know what he meant by that. I kind of nodded. And okay. And then if you do decide to go into it, just remember these 2 things. Number 1, always surround yourself with great people greater than you. Okay? And then secondly, always have a plan for everything. And he said, son, just keep me posted on what you decide to do. Now, I don't know if I thought he would offer me a job on the spot or something like that, but I walked out of there and, again, greatly impacted by that. And within a few weeks, I got a call from one of those summer jobs I had in Gadsden, Alabama, and I got offered a coaching job at a small single-A school in Gadsden, Alabama in 1973. And that was kind of my coaching career. And again, 52 years later here, although I'm not in coaching anymore, I went 31 years as a football coach, 30 as a head football coach, and almost 40 years as an athletic director. Now I'm kind of in administration athletics and still going to the school building on a part-time basis at Buford. So that's a little bit of how my journey got started and growing up and all.
So what was your first coaching job at this little school? What was your position?
Yeah. So I get hired at this school, and again, it's a little small single school, and I think there's 3 coaches on the whole staff. We're coaching everything, and driving the 1 or 2 school buses we have, our athletic buses. And I was the head basketball coach, and as a receiver, I was the offense coordinator. I ran the offense for 1 year, and then after 1 year, my head coach there left, and they hired me as the head coach. So at age, 23 or 24, I'm all of a sudden a head football coach. In no way am I prepared necessarily to do that, except for those lessons I'd learned from Coach Bryant. I knew to try to surround myself with great people and that pretty well has labeled every stop I've made. I've really chosen very carefully that the people I work with are going to allow me to surround myself with people better than me. And so that's kind of how my coaching career got started. I became a head football coach my second year out of college. And so I spent those first 8 or 9 years in that Gadsden, Anniston area of Alabama at a couple schools. And my wife was from Atlanta, or her family was from Atlanta. She grew up in Birmingham, but we had decided that I was at a point after 7 or 8 years. Do I want to stay in this with a family, with a young daughter, or do I want to pursue maybe utilizing that business degree? And if I do, Gadsden, Alabama is not the place to do it. Let's move to Atlanta, and maybe I can get a coaching job over in that area. And if I decided at that point to get out of coaching, then that would be a great area to maybe pursue business area interests. So anyway, so in 1984, I become the head football coach at Lassiter High School over in Cobb County. It was a brand new school. They had played JV football for 2 years, and they were about to enter their first year of reaching competition. And I was their head coach. They hired again out of Gadsden, and stayed there 3 years. We made the playoffs 2 of the 3 years, and pretty well got that program going pretty good. And then the Marietta High School job opened up, and I don't know, it was the city school, and I had been raised in a city school and coached at city schools in Alabama, and it just fit my leadership style and my personality and coaching beliefs a little bit better, having an independent school. And so I applied for that job, and they hired me in 1987, and I was there 9 years, but I had 8 wonderful seasons there. Just enjoyed it. 2 or 3 of the best players I coached during my whole that I've ever been around in my 50-year career happened there at Marietta, and so that went great. And then along about 95 it would be, after 8 years there, we were living on this side of Atlanta toward Alpharetta, a little bit more toward Gwinnett County, and I had been commuting all the way over to Marietta all those years for a lot of reasons. Our kids got involved in the school system over here. I didn't want to disrupt them, and I was making the move, and my son was involved in a lot of athletic activities, and I was missing them with that long drive. And so I began to look for jobs on this side of Atlanta, around the Gwinnett County area, Hall County, Forsyth County area. And then somebody told me, said, well, I don't know if you'd be interested, but there's a little old school called Buford High School. It has an opening you might be interested in. And of course, Marietta at that time, 4 classification was a 4A school. But I got home that afternoon, and sometime over that weekend, Martha and I jumped in the truck, and we drove up to Buford, Georgia. Never had been there in my life, and it was kind of out in the middle of nowhere at that time, back in 1995. Growth had not hit the northern part of Gwinnett County. Buford, a single A school of about 350 students. And so again, within a couple of months, I was blessed to be offered that job. And again, that was in 1995. I came in only as the head football coach. Ed Cochran was the athletic director. And that's kind of how we got Buford football going. We didn't have necessarily instant success with championships, but I just was able, Buford allowed me really to hire some of the best coaches I've worked with during my long tenure in those initial years. And so by the year 2000, we were playing for a state championship, and it had been 23 years since Buford had played in a state championship match. And then in 2001, we played another state championship and won it. And then in 2002, we got moved up to AA. We didn't think we could compete on that level. There was America sitting there as a 2-time defending state champ, and we upset them in a semifinal match in the Dome, and lo and behold, we won another championship in 2002. And then in 03, we've got a really strong team coming back, and we pretty well dominated that season and won our third straight state championship and fourth state championship finals in a row. And then in 04, we advanced to the championship again in AA against a very talented Charlton County team who we beat the year before, and they beat us in the last game I coached in 2004. So that completed my 10-year tenure of head football coaching and the 10 years at Buford. And it kind of set the culture and trajectory that has become Buford football now. My longtime assistant had played for me at Marietta was Jess Simpson. He took over, and for the next 12 years, I think he played maybe in 10 state championship finals and won 7 of them. And then Brian Appling was an assistant I'd hired, took over in 2019 and won 3 more state championships. And so, I think the number's now at 13 state championships at the year 2000, and we've played in 18 finals. And so we certainly have our tradition and culture, and it's still ongoing, and I still get to enjoy it. So that's kind of my football journey.
What a journey it was, too. I remember as a young coach, those back-to-back-to-back, the rest of us were going, they may never lose. they legitimately might not. Y'all set the, it was a record. I mean, there was all kind of records, but everybody's looking at each other going, they can keep moving them up in classification. They could win the biggest classification. They may literally never lose. And I'm sure y'all didn't feel that way, but the rest of us were looking at y'all going, oh my God. They're not. They're never going to lose another game.
Every time they moved us up, we were scared to do that. But you're right. We did set the state of Georgia consecutive win streak at 47, and Eagles Landing got in the 30s, and Calhoun got in the 30s. But that's a pretty hard record to win 47 games in a row. I don't care what classification you're in.
Oh yeah, I don't care if you're playing church league. That is a heck of an accomplishment. I had Joey King on a while back, and he talked about that streak they went on, and he said, I know it's cliche, but we literally just thought, let's win this week.
Yeah.
And then let's try to win the next week. And then all of a sudden you're looking around going, well, we've won a lot of games.
That's exactly right.
You just don't really think about it.
And I think the good programs, that's the way they operate. We never talked about championships. We had a successful season had to be a championship. It was more about pursuing excellence, the best version of our team, the best version of you as an individual player, a constant culture of trying to improve your individual skills, you as a young man, and our football team on a daily basis. And if we do that and take it literally, it's an old cliche, but you literally take it one game at a time, and we were just able to sell our kids and parents on that thing. We didn't look too far down the road, and we rarely played undisciplined football, and we could block and tackle and run and hit, and we weren't very sophisticated. We ran 4 or 5 plays, but on defense, we'd get after you. And on special teams, we were going to block kicks and return kicks, and you better strap it on tight. And that's kind of the culture we built. And again, that's kind of where we still try to hang our hat. People still say we run a dinosaur offense. Most of the time, we still got 2 backs in the backfield. And so that's just kind of running the football and being hard-nosed is kind of who we established ourselves in those early years to be. And that tradition just keeps rolling.
Well, and that was one of the joys I had when you agreed to come on is, one of the things that fired me up is so, some of these guys that listen and younger coaches can listen is you didn't just come out the chute going 14-0, 15-0, and 13-2. I mean, your first few years as a coach in Alabama and coming up at Laster and Marietta. I mean, Laster and Marietta, you didn't have any seasons that there weren't anything to sneeze at, but
yeah,
you had to build stuff. And the same thing at Buford. It wasn't like you stepped in and all of a sudden you had to build it. It wasn't like
exactly.
People miss that. They think that some of these younger guys, all they know, it's kind of like you and I growing up, remembering, well, I'm not trying to throw any shade at you because I'm 50 and you started coaching the year before I was born, but we remember when the Braves were god awful, and there's a generation that all they know is 92 to now Braves that were good. There's a generation of coaches that all they remember is 2000 to now Buford, and they don't remember when Coach Wood got there in 95 and they were single A.
Yeah.
And you had to build it.
Yeah. Yeah, it took us 5 years before we played in the state championship game. Now, we played in a couple semifinals, but again, like I said, in that 2000, it had been 23 years since Buford had played in a championship game and only had one football championship in its whole history. And so you're right, it has to be built, and you have to have a vision and a plan and an expectation process. And we had those belief systems and values, and our community just bought into it. And of course, if you're going to win championships and one like we did, you certainly got talented players that, what we say, talented players that are committed to year-round development of their skills. And we were surrounded by a lot of great players, but we had all those other ingredients that championship programs have. I had the right kind of coaches. I had the unbelievable support from administration. We are a city school, and I don't think anybody could match what the city of Buford has done for our athletic program in football over these many years. I was able to build a feeder program, and Gwinnett County Youth Football League is probably unmatched in this state in many ways in terms of just the number of talented athletes in schools. So here we were, a little single-A school, but we were in the Gwinnett Football League playing against the Brookwoods and Parkviews, who at that time were the dominant programs in the top classification, and our kids grew up playing those guys. So when we got in the Dome playing in Americas, we weren't intimidated by that. Our kids had grown up playing against great people, and our feeder program has been a huge factor of our success. And so and then the development of the parent booster club relationship, of the support we got, we had those 5 or 6 foundational programs that I've always felt that championship programs had to have. And it took us a little while to get some of those things in place, but once we got them in place and we were able to keep surrounding ourselves with the right kind of coaches and then the talented players that we had, we've just been able to sustain it for the most part for, 25 years now.
Well, what was that first state championship like? I ask everybody that when they win the first one. I bet that was, you were like, okay,
yeah,
we did it.
It was. And we played for the state championship in 2000 with a pretty good football team, but we ran against a really talented Commerce team who I still think is the best high school running back I ever coached against. And he went off on us that night. So we had that taste in our mouth. We had a pretty good group coming back for 0-1 team. And seniors came up with it. They kind of came up. It was on our run-through banners, just one more. We just want to win one more game this season. And that was kind of the mantra that carried that 0-1 team. And so, we get through the season with not too many close calls. We had seems like we had a close semifinal game with, was it Clinch County in the Dome, where we won like 15-7 or something. But other than that, pretty much. But then we get a rematch with Bowden over at Bowden. And they were a strong program. We'd beat them pretty good during the regular season. And I just remember the long line when we got there, and it was just an overflowing crowd and just electric environment for a state championship match. And then to win that, just the celebration of on the field after the game, the drive back, we weren't too highfalutin. We stopped at a McDonald's and just sitting on the curb at a McDonald's after winning a state championship with a bunch of coaches, and we couldn't eat enough cheeseburgers that night. So, yeah, you don't sleep for 2 or 3 days just trying to get your arms around it. And they're calling me the next day, Coach, we got to have a parade through downtown Buford. And so we had the parade, and then our legislator invited us down to the state capitol and all those kind of things that go with winning a championship. It's just hard to describe what it means to a small community in town like Buford.
And then that was back in the old days when the state championship game was played at the school.
That's exactly right.
Or one of the schools.
Yeah, they were. Yeah, in fact,
which I miss that personally.
Yeah. We got to play semifinals in the Dome starting in I guess 2000. So all of that 5-year run of play in the state championships, we had played 5 semifinal games in the Georgia Dome, and obviously had won all of them because we made finals, and those were great experiences. But the state championship games themselves were all at different fields. We went to Commerce, we went to Bowden, and then in 02 and 03, those were home, and 04, we played three straight state championship games at home in Buford. And that was electric, too, to be able to do that, to bring it back to your own community. So, yeah, those were great years in getting our program started, Chris.
Well, you obviously had a system in place that you learned from Coach Bryant and put your own spin on it. And you obviously went into all of the places you coached, whether it was in Gaston or around the Anniston area, or whether it was Lassiter or Marietta. What was when you went into a place? What were some things that you were like, I got to get these things; these have to be done?
Yeah. Well, I think it starts with Coach Bryant's advice. Remember the first thing: surround yourself with great people greater than you. It took me a couple of years, again, a slow learner with an Alabama degree. My career didn't start off so great in Alabama. Probably after those 7 or 8 years, I might have been a 500 level coach, but I'm experimenting and developing. And somewhere along the line in those early years, I heard, or we coaches, we always steal something. I was always one going to a coaching clinic or going down to our college campus during spring practice, and we're all stealing stuff. But somewhere along the line, I heard the bus analogy about people decisions being your most important decision. And it was something like this. To win a championship or to compete for a championship, you got to get the right people on the bus. And so that was important. And then when you get the right people on the bus, you've got to get them in the right seat. And that's really important. And then sometimes the hardest part as a coach, sometimes you have to get the wrong person off. So your people decisions, your coach decisions, who you surround yourself are always your most important. So that was kind of my analogy that I would sell to my school system administrators. We got to get the right people on this bus. And you got to be the right people that are going to help me get those right people. I know they got to be teachers, but they got to be the right people. Well, Coach, who's the right people on your bus? Who do you want on your bus? And early on, I decided that I wanted coaches on my bus that aspired to master the 3 C's of what I thought great leaders possess. And I'm not sure where I stole this or came up with it, but it was my mantra for basically my whole career. Who do I want on my bus? I want a coach that's competent. I want a coach that connects with kids, and I want a coach with the right character to make an impact on kids. And so in my interviewing and hiring and all those, you can certainly find coaches. Most young coaches want to master in the first C. They want to out-coach you, out-scheme you. And there's nothing wrong with it, because I wanted a competent coach. I didn't want to ever leave a field feel like we were out-coached. And so that was really important. And a lot of an interview was spent on the competency of what you know, and if I get you on this bus as the right person, where's the seat you're going to fit best in? And but competency was really important. But those next 2 C's, I think, are just as important, and that's the connection piece of a coach that knows how to push buttons with kids to reach their full potential. Again, that excellence thing, the best version of yourself. And when you get a coach that has a competency level, and yet he can relate it to a kid and connect with that kid and gets to know that kid, and the old saying, to get a player run through the wall for you, man, you got a special coach right there. But the last thing was also important. And for me, growing up as I did, and my beliefs and values and family and caring about kids, I wanted a coach of a very high character. And profaning kids or browbeating kids. Yeah, we're going to get them to play hard. We're going to get them to play strain. Yeah, we're going to be physically tough, but we're going to do it the right way. We're going to inspire them from the inside to believe in this and play hard. And we're not going to be out of the role model behavior mode at any point, whether it's on the field, off the field, or in your personal life. That's who I want working for us is you're going to love and care about kids, and you're going to make an impact on them. That was in our mission statement. It was in our core beliefs and values, and it involved character. So that's kind of the way I got programs started. Then along the line, in terms of football philosophy and how you would sell it to a community and sell it to kids, early on in my career, I heard at a clinic one time a coach say, "What are the three most important questions in life?" And I perked up on that a little bit because that had to do with football. And in fact, this was Bill McCartney. If you remember the old Colorado coach, it was a dynamic coach and had won championship or a national championship back maybe around 89 or 90 or something. But anyway, the three most important questions that shaped much of my philosophy, scheme-wise and everything, revolved around those three questions. Who are you? Where are you going? And how are you going to get there? So who are you? And I felt like I learned this from Alabama. When we put that red jersey on, there was something so significant about that. And it was almost an intangible feeling that came across you that when you put that red jersey on, that crimson jersey on, and ran through that tunnel, you felt like you could climb any mountain, beat any opponent. You could play out of your mind and out of your body experience just simply because you were Alabama and wore that jersey. And so I think that's a key part in coaching leadership, brilliant people is never forget who you are, what makes you significant. And for us, it's Buford football. And Buford football was significant. Wearing the green and gold jersey, what it does to you. And we had it in our game program. We had it on our school board, the specialness of who we are and what we represent and the tradition and everything that we've built. That's who you are. You're a Buford football player, and you represent all that. And our kids buy into that, and we sell that. And again, that comes from tradition. But a lot of it revolves around the next two questions: where are you going? And that gets to the vision and, I guess, goals and passion of your program. And so where are we going? Who are we? We're Buford football. That's special. That's significant. Where we're going, we want to compete for championships, and we want to do that by pursuing excellence, the best version of ourselves. What we talked about. So that's where we're going, and that will permeate everything we do. We want to compete on a statewide level and be prepared when the playoffs begin to be playing our best football. And then the third one, I guess, is what you're asking about, is philosophical beliefs about how you're going to get there. And a lot of that's grounded from my Alabama playing days. I believed, and to this day still believe, that most state championships or most championships on any level starts with great defense. So even as a young coach, when I might only have 25 or 30 players, and that's all I had on my first Buford teams, my best players were always going to be on defense, and I would rest them on offense. And certainly as the season goes on, they could play both ways. But we probably spend 2-to-1 practice time on defense. And I just believed it. My best coach always was going to be my defense coordinator, because basically I was going to pretty well let him run the football. And for much of my career at Buford there, when we were making the runs, yes, some of my defense coordinator. And now he's defense line coach at Georgia Tech and coached with the Falcons and coached at Miami. So, I think I made a pretty good decision on that one. So anyway, we hung our hat on that. And then I guess from Alabama days too, then we're going to run the football on offense. And so most of my career, now I went through a wing tee phase a little bit, coaching in Alabama, and I brought it. That lasted, or I ran the wing tee those 3 years with pretty good success, but not competitive on a statewide level necessarily. And I stayed in it a couple of years at Marietta, and then with some of those talented athletes, I ended up evolving into somewhat of an I formation team, but with wing T blocking schemes up front, and pretty well stayed for that with a few years. But then evolved into pretty traditional I formation team, 2-back I formation team. My fullback was a very key ingredient in the running game, as well as certainly blocking for tailbacks. But I had that run of great tailbacks and found ways to get on the ball and run the football and then, of course, you know, how you're going to get there. You're going to play great defense. You're going to run the football. And then, you know, special teams, we're not going to ever beat ourselves. And we're going to make at least 1 or 2 plays in the game with field position or turnover in special teams, or making a play with a block kick or return kick to help us win a close game. And that's pretty simple, but I'm a pretty simple coach. And that's pretty what I ran with for 30 years as a head football coach.
And in those 30 years, you mentioned, I mean, there's so many, you're obviously going to leave some kids out, but who are some of the best players you either coached or saw? You mentioned the running back from Commerce. You kind of mentioned 3 kids at Marietta were some of the best you ever coached. Who are some of the kids that stand out that you either saw on the other side or that you coached that were just, that you went, wow, that kid's special? Yeah.
You know, I mentioned that my first 7 or 8 years in coaching, I was a pretty average coach. But you know how many Division I signees I had in my first 7 or 8 years as a coach? 1. And he was a punter that went to Auburn. And so I just never coached a Division I athlete. And even got to Lassiter High School. And while I had a couple of smaller division players, I did not have a big-time Division I player. And then I get to Marietta High School. Now, this is 15 years into my coaching journey, somewhat. And, well, not that much, I guess 11 or 12 years into it. And it's at Marietta where I, began to, particularly there where I was, to have the great players. And really the first 2 were on that first team I had at Marietta, the first 2 years. I had Scott Sisson, an unbelievable kicker that became an All-American kicker at Georgia Tech and helped them win the national championship, I think, in 1990. And then I had a heck of a tight end defensive end named Jess Simpson, who ended up playing at Auburn. And then that's who I hired back and stayed with me for almost 20 years at Buford. And then in 89, I'm in my office one day and I get this call from this coach in Germany. And he said, "Coach, I'm over here in Germany and I coach these military kids off the base over here. And I got a kid and his family that are moving back to the Atlanta area. And their coach or their dad had asked me to check around about good programs that they might move their son to." And we got to talk. And he said, this quarterback I got is a quarter. This kid I got's a quarterback. And of course it's Army, it's Army football, but he's an unbelievable quarterback. And so I said, "Coach, you got some film? Y'all just send it to me and have the dad reach out to me. Try to get a little timeline on when you're moving to Atlanta." And so I don't know. It was a few days later. I didn't think much about it, to be honest with you. JV type kid or JV type football, but a good quarterback moving in from Germany. And a few days later, the tape came in. And again, I just put it right there on my desk and I don't know, didn't get to looking at it immediately, but one of my coaches grabbed it. And within an hour or so, this coach comes around and with this look on it, said, Coach, sit down, turn it on. You got to see this. And so this coach in Germany sent us a highlight tape of Eric Zier playing military football in Germany. And I almost wet my pants after I saw the arm and the power and all that stuff.
Yeah, he wasn't bad.
So all of a sudden, I'm on the phone now calling this coach in Germany. When are they going to be over here? Where's he going? And, is he going to visit us and all that kind of stuff? And so long story short, he did move to Atlanta, or his dad and them made a trip to Atlanta, and he scheduled about 5 visits to what his coach in Germany had determined. He had called some Auburn coaches and Alabama coaches and asked them who were some of the better programs in the Atlanta area. And Neil Calloway was one of my former Alabama teammates, and he was coaching in Auburn. And for some reason, they got hold of Neil Calloway, and he said, well, one of the stops you need to make is Dexter Wood at Marietta High School. I know him and know his background, and I know the kind of program he runs. And so we got on the list for desires to make a visit. And you can better believe when they visited Marietta High School, I dropped everything I had. I spent almost all day with them, watched film with them, took them through my offense philosophy and everything. But was unsure because they had visited some other top schools. And within a week, Rick Zier called me and says, we're coming to Marietta High School. And they arrived at spring practice, and the trajectory of Marietta football changed in a hurry. and all of a sudden, the two-back running offense became a little bit more of a wide-open, explosive offense. I went to Florida State. I went everywhere at that time with people that were throwing the football around, and I put in the 3-step, the 5-step passing game, and pretty doggone sophisticated. And Eric Zier just had an unbelievable 2-year career for us, and was the national quarterback of the year. I got to go to the Washington, D.C. quarterback club with him after his senior year as the nation's top quarterback. And, of course, we know what he did at Georgia and set SEC records and had the great career. So he was the best when I coached there. I had a couple. I had a little tailback named Mel Jackson that played a little bit at Clemson. It was a great player. But I had a run of probably 8 or 10 Division I type players at Marietta. And I just mentioned the top 3 or 4 there. And those are some of the best ones I played against. And since I've been at Buford, not as many to begin with, but one of the first top players I had that ended up being an All-SEC player at Georgia was Tim Wansley. He was my first quarterback, and he was a quarterback defensive back and was a pretty good defensive back for Georgia, and ended up playing at Georgia and playing in the NFL with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers when they won the Super Bowl. So he was one of the best athletes I ever coached at Buford. But I had some good ones too there that went to Georgia. Mikey Henderson was a pretty good receiver over there. Trey Chandler was probably the best lineman I ever coached. They were not necessarily all SEC players, but were pretty significant players. And so it's been a great career and great run of athletes. But you ask about some of the best ones I've seen across the field. And I don't know that they were necessarily with me coaching, but I tell people at Buford over these last 25 years, some of the great ones have come in there. We had Derrick Henry come in there at Yulee High School in Florida and play us. And we beat them on an ESPN broadcast. And we thought we were the world's best defense because we held them to 125 yards. I've never seen such a big, strong kid that can run. And then not too long later, Deshaun Watson rolls in there from Gainesville High School. And they beat us that night. And although his passing game we controlled pretty good, he beat us with his feet that night. And I've never seen a more elite quarterback that could run and pass like he could on the high school level. And I think Gainesville High School ended up winning the state championship that year. And so those are some of the great ones along the way that I've seen and been amazed by through the great journey.
Well, my favorite question now is this. Over all the years that you've coached, who are some of your favorite guys you competed against, other coaches that you just loved competing against, or seeing them on the 50-yard line before the game and hugging their neck and getting to spend time with them and seeing them at clinics? I mean, guys that you just really enjoyed over the years of coaching, that you just really respected and you know, built a good friendship with over the years.
Yeah. Those journeys. I don't remember as much about the Alabama years early. There were there was an old coaching legend in Alabama named Luce Scales, I believe was his name, Coach Scales at Alexandria, and he wore me out a couple of years there as a young buck coach, and I just admired the way he coached and all that. But when I got to the Georgia area, I think one of the first guys that I really connected with, and when I was at Lassiter, Tommy Marshall was coaching at Walton High School, and he ended up being not necessarily a great coach, but a great athletic director. He coached at Furman and all that, and developed kind of a lifelong friendship and relationship with him I admired. When I started coaching at Marietta, probably one of the key rivalries that Marietta was with McEachern High School, and Jimmy Dorsey and I we were both running the wing tee offense a little bit, and so we were a little bit of brethren and pretty successful statewide level, although we had not won state championships. We'd played in semifinals, and I enjoyed that relationship with him over those years when I was at Marietta, and greatly respected coaching against him. And then my years at Buford, the first region I was in for several years when we were in single A was with Commerce. And really one of the best football coaches they ever coached against at a little single A school at Commerce was Steve Savage. And he beat us in that state championship game of 2000. And he had that little running back I alluded to earlier named Monte Williams, about 5'7", 170 pounds that we couldn't tackle. And he was in some type of triple option offense that isolated us and would get him one-on-one. It seemed like at will. But I thought, and I had such a great admiration for the way Steve Savage ran that Commerce program, and that was good. And then my last 2 or 3 years there, we ended up running into Charlton County and Rich McWhorter, who had won state championships at Charlton 2 or 3 before we first played them in the 03 state championship game. And he was kind of a forerunner of some of that shotgun offense that was going on in the early 2000s. And he had a quarterback 7 yards deep. And so beating him in the state championship game in 03 was a great relationship. And then doggone if he didn't, we don't play him again the very next year in 04 state championship game, and he gets us back. So basically went 1-1 against him. It's kind of crazy, though. Jess Simpson takes over, and who does he play the next year in the playoffs? Charlton County. Who does he play his second year? Charlton County. And he gets knocked out both of those years in 05 and 06 by Charlton County. And then in 07, lo and behold, in the state semifinals, he's playing Charlton County again and beats them. So we went from 03 to 07 playing Charlton County in the state playoffs. And I think over those 6 years went 3-3 against them. So, yeah. So I admired Rich McWhorter greatly. And just a lot of coaching giants in our state. Some of my great joys were coaching in all-star games. I remember Sam Bars. I was on a Georgia-Florida coaching staff, and how great of a coach he was. I think you said you interviewed him today, and John Hill was a great coach at Cedartown, about my age now, and we had some great years. I coached for him in all-star games, and so just a lot of great memories of the great coaches in this state. Coach Chadwick, I've had a great relationship with him over the years. We've done clinics together and done things over the years and admired him. I had a run there of where in the single A football, if you were going to win championships, it was going to have to run through Lincoln County. And Larry Campbell, to me, certainly is a coaching legend and was. And some of my biggest wins at Buford and becoming competitive on statewide level when we opened that 01 season that we won the state championship, we beat Larry Campbell in Lincoln County in a home opener. And so those are some of the legends I got to compete against, and I learned a lot of lessons from them.
Well, Coach, you've had one of the most awesome careers and continue to affect young people, and your 3 C's, you have exemplified those. You're obviously competent. You obviously care about children and connect with them, and you are way, way, way high in character, and I sure do appreciate you coming on and sharing your story with us tonight.
Well, Chris, I'm glad I got introduced to your podcast. I plan to go back and listen to them. And again, I'm honored to be considered a legend and to be involved among some of these other great coaches you've been interviewing and working with and those to come. And so this has been an honor to visit with you and tell you a little bit about my story. It's a story of God's grace for my family and my career and the people I've been surrounded by. And it's been a journey that really I'm still enjoying. And I couldn't be more blessed. So thank you.